Mm. This video is my top 15 devil fruits in One Piece. My top 15. My favorite. Which devil fruits the Green Angel would want if he was in the One Piece world. Based upon how they're shown in the anime. You know, some of them are ranked higher than others, and you'll be like, why did you have that one higher? I just like the way it is. Like the way it looks. I think if I had the devil fruit, I'd be able to tap into it better than the person who uses it does. So, because that's what this kind of video is, right? My top 15 devil fruits in One Piece, right? But we have, 5 honorable mentions, right? These fruits almost made the cut, but didn't. So, I got the snake fruit model, Yamata no Orochi. So that's the fruit that Orochi had. The Shogun of Wano, who was Shogun of Wano before Momonosuke rose to power and everything, right? His Devil Fruit, it's, actually cool. He could have died a couple of times, but the way his Devil Fruit works, it's kind of like the Hydra almost. Like you cut its head off and it grows back, heads, but you got to cut it at a certain angle, and other things. It has a weak spot. And if you don't know where the weak spot is, you can't take it down. Now we got. I also got the sand fruit, crocodile's devil fruit. It's nice. You can manipulate sand. You can create more sand. You can basically kill shit. Um, you know, by zapping it of its nutrients. It dries up and it dies. You can do that with this devil fruit. However, it's not in my top 15. I got the woods fruit on there as well. You can control the environment, the plants. You can also zap, nutrients from other human beings to like grow your strength. So that devil fruit's also powerful, but not like these ones I got in my top 15. Not to me, anyway. It didn't make the cut, unfortunately. The pressed fruit, that is Fujitora's devil fruit. He manipulates gravity. He can weigh you down with gravity. He can lift shit up. He can make shit, float, right? Because it's like way less, 0 to gravity, right? He sends meteors down from the heavens, right? That's what he does with his devil fruit. And it's a great devil fruit to have, but it's also not the ones that I'll be talking about soon. And then I also have the shadow fruit as the 5th honorable mention on this list. Gecko Moria, I don't like Moria. You'll find that out if you don't already know. The Green Angel don't like Gecko Moria. But we know that he's not the best at using his devil fruit. Like he had a good plan or whatever, but he needs to use strong shadows and strong dead bodies. So basically, if I was in that world, right, I would take the shadow of somebody who's powerful, get lucky, and take on somebody who's powerful, take their shadow, and then apply it to some dead person's body, like Ace or Whitebeard, right? Because you can't put a weak ass shadow inside of a powerful person's body. You've seen that with Brook's shadow, right? The guys are not at his or even close to what he was when he was alive. You gotta have somebody who's like on the same level as him, and he didn't use his Delphi, right? But now to the actual list, all right? I'm done with that shit, all right? Number 15, we have the Paw Paw Fruit of Bartholomew Kuma. You saw what he was able to do with it. He was able to get people the fuck away from the slave hunting game after he consumed it when he was a boy. I'll be doing similar shit. I'll be sending people places. Like if they don't stay away from me, I just send them somewhere I've been before. they'll have to figure their way, back to where they're, supposed to be. I could also send myself, places too. The Green Angel can, do shit like that, with this dope fruit. I like that dope fruit for its that quality, and it basically can repel um energy out of a person's body, pain, negativity, you know, all your, physical pain can be repelled out. And it's basically like healing, essentially, you know, and it does that, right? You can put that pain inside of somebody else. You can't just like let it sit there. It'll go back to the person you extracted it from, or if you extracted it out of yourself, you can, use it for those purposes. I like this dough fruit. And then you can like condense air down and use it as like a, create a sonic boom with it. Um, and it fucks shit up too. Where's the shock, right? I got at number 14, I have the ice fruit. Ice fruit, I like it. Aokiji uses it pretty damn well. Um, I'll say this about the ice fruit. The ice fruit is a fruit that I like because when mastered, you can put your hand in the water and basically freeze the ocean, or continue to freeze the ocean, riding on the ocean with a bicycle, you know, something that don't weigh too much, and you can, create a path, for your bike to run on, but you gotta keep your dough fruit on at all times. That shit's cool. And then when you freeze people too, you freeze them to their core. So then, like, basically when they're frozen, like, inside out. It's not just like they're in an ice cube. No, it's like their fucking blood's frozen too. So then you gotta basically, the only people who are breaking out of shit like that are conquerors. People who have conquerors high, or people who have devil fruit powers in opposition to it. Which brings me to number 13, which is the flame fruit. I like the flame fruit. You can burn shit down with it. You'll never have to worry about a campfire when shit gets cold. Just and you got yourself a campfire. You got a light. If you need to light yourself up, or you need to just, find your way in the dark. So that dough fruit's cool. We know the Ace and Sabo had that dough fruit. And they both use it pretty well, in different ways. I'd use it, similarly to how they use it. I'd create like suns and then start throwing them at people like, I'll do shit like that if I had the dough fruit. Let's see. At number 12, we have the human fruit model Daibutsu. What is this dough fruit? This is the dough fruit of Sengoku the Buddha, right? He ate that dough fruit. And when he ate that dough fruit, he said, damn, he can create shockwaves with his, he puts his hands like that. He's that little handsome, he's like, boom. I'll be doing the same shit, golden glow, keep people off my dick. It's a pretty decent dough fruit, if you ask me. Keep him at bay, keep him off my dick. Sengoku probably, I don't know. See, that's the thing about Sengoku. He hasn't, shown everything he could do. We haven't seen a lot from him. We've seen him at Marine Ford doing the shockwaves and shit. That's how I know about the shockwaves being a thing. And then I believe he's like, very durable. That's gold around his skin. You become a gold, like Buddha, a golden Buddha. So that shit sounds cool to me. but I got it at number 12. All right. Because at the next one, I have at 11. I'll make sure I got these right. Here you go. I got Big Mom Soul Fruit at 11. See, she was using her dough fruit, right? She would basically, tax people, with their soul energy. You can live in Toto land. This is a land full of, people, right? Of all walks of life. But you gotta pay me, 6 months of your lifespan to stay here, or a year's worth of your lifespan to stay here for 6 months. Some shit like that. It was like, something fucked up like that. If I had the dough fruit, I don't know if I would do that. I wouldn't be doing that shit to everybody. I would do like she does. I would take people's soul and their energy and shit if they fucked around and played games with me, But, and I would create homies too, probably. But I wouldn't be doing it like that much. I want to kind of have the element of surprise on my side, you know. Um, I'll probably add that to like my own physical powers. You know how she can do that, right? So basically, most of that energy would just go to making me more powerful, in the long run. That's how I would use it. Um, but I have that at 11, I don't have it at high. I have number 10. I have the string fruit. The string fruit's a paramecia type, you know, and it's the second one I've mentioned, or third one I've mentioned. No, fourth one I mentioned. Sorry about that. Or fifth one I mentioned. God damn it. Um, and it's at number 10. I got this one there because, man, like, when I think of a Devil Fruit Master in One Piece, I think Doflamingo. He's one that jumps out to me. I'm like, yeah, this man, he was like definitely training. Since the day he got it, he was like, I'm gonna use this shit to take over the fucking world. And he basically was like on his way to doing shit like that. He was on his way to doing shit like that, brother. Girl, he was on, he was definitely on his way to do shit like that. Um, this man could turn the environment to rubber. Once it's awakened, he can turn, or not rubber, but into strings. He was fighting against Luffy, right? And he turns the environment into strings. The strings can also cut through fucking, blocks, steel. It can cut through, you know, dense objects. You'd be cutting through cars and all kind of shit. You could also like grab clouds because clouds do have a certain, like, clouds weigh something, man. They might not weigh that much, but they weigh enough to where you can pull on it and get moving. Like, so I like the way you can do that. And then also you can heal your injuries. You can stitch yourself back up essentially with strings. And then you can make people fight against each other, move them around like puppets against their will, you know, that type of thing. In a like 1v10 situation, it would be great. Just have them fight each other and you just sit back and watch them, take each other out instead of taking you out. So number 10, that's what I have, number 10. So at number 9, I have the bird fruit. Model Phoenix. Yeah, that's right. The Green Angel likes Marco, the Phoenix is devil fruit. Because I know it doesn't have like a lot of like, offensive capabilities, but I think I could find a way to, make it have some offensive capabilities. Because it's fire, you can maybe figure out a way to make that type of fire not just a healing property, but like you can choose if you want to heal somebody with it or you can fucking burn somebody with it. Like basically it's like the flame fruit, but then it's like, if you want to heal yourself, that's always going to be a possibility. And then, some people don't know this, but the user keeps his or her youthfulness the whole time. So basically, if I eat it now, I'll look like this, forever. I won't grow old. That shit sounds kind of cool. Healing properties, the defensive aspects of it, I like it. And I think it is one of the better ones in the verse, as far as like those type of things. Defensive capabilities and then recoup capabilities are also really damn good for that devil fruit. At number 8, I have the Paw Paw Fruit at number 8. The Paw Paw Fruit, it's cool. You can definitely control shit in the room. You know, you can amputate, cut people to pieces, you know, dismember them, right? You can take their heart out. You can switch their heart out with somebody else's heart. You know, maybe, you know, if you like get crazy with it, you can switch people's brains out. You know, but you're basically doing that when you swap the hearts and shit. You're swapping, you know, personality traits. But you can also damage people from the inside when you use Kroom, and you're using Law's basically his awakened devil fruit. He can apply the room to like a sword, and then he can also anything in that area, right, is basically under his control. He can swap shit. You know, I want to switch spots with that person, and then trap him. You know, with some like things in the environment. Bam, bam, bam. You know, blocks of like whatever. You know, stone, whatever the fuck. You know, trees. Throw them at him. You know, radio knife. You know, run up on somebody and hit them with radio knife and shock them from the inside, or gamma knife. That's what it's called. Um, that shit's powerful. And then you also have the option of the eternal youth surgery. So then you can become immortal essentially with that devil fruit. It's a versatile devil fruit. But I got it at number 8. You know, at number 7 I got the rumble fruit. This is NL's devil fruit. That is the lightning abilities. You can control thunder itself. That shit's devastating. You know what it does. You move as fast as lightning. You are lightning itself. You can summon lightning balls from the sky and take out cities, if need be. You know, that's power. That's definitely a powerful devil fruit. That's the definition of power right there. 6, I have the Glint fruit. Glint fruit, same as the lightning fruit, but even faster than it, right? You just go, I like that speed, right? I like the way Kizu uses his devil fruit. He can summon, beams of light that can, also cause, devastating, damage to the environment. You can also create light for yourself, in a dark space. You can always, get away from people, for the most part. You'll be over there, you'll be over there. You can even like basically create after images of yourself because you're moving at the speed of light. Fucking with people like that. I got it at number 6 though. So at number 5 we have the Magma fruit. See, I love these low get type fruits. Your body's intangible and you basically have to know hockey to, take them on. But if I was in One Piece, I'd make sure I have hockey in my bag too. And the devil fruit. So if I do run on somebody, it's like, game on. Magma fruit. That's Akainu's devil fruit. We've seen him, defeat Ace, who's a fire user, defeat Aokiji, who's an ice user. Well, we didn't see it, but we know what happened, right? Um, that shit's hot, and it was claimed that it was like the most offensively capable devil fruit, capable of like hella damage, attack power is out, crazy. He can basically send down meteors from the sky. He did that shit at Marineford. Like, I know how like people talk about Fujitora and shit, and it's cool. It's cool what he does, and he can send down more too. But like Akainu can do that, and then he's hot all the time. Like, you don't want to touch that man. If you touch him, you'll fucking burn. He can shoot his fists up into the sky, bam, 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 and then they come down. It's like meteorites, bam, bam, bam. He was fucking them birds up. And I don't like Akainu, but I like that devil fruit. If I had this devil fruit, I would be like, blowing holes through people too. Fish fruit model Azure Dragon, number 4. This devil fruit is definitely powerful. I like it because with this devil fruit, you don't only turn into a dragon, and you have the hybrid form at your disposal as well. Um, You have the ability to use like wind, fire, lightning, all of these elements. You have enhanced durability. You're a tank. You're now a fucking tank. You can handle attacks. You can fly. Like, you can do a lot of shit with this stuff. And it's like, again, you can control the weather and shit with it. You can, float shit into the sky, drop it down. You can, destroy shit as a dragon. Or you could be a human hybrid dragon and destroy shit. So I got that one at number 4. At number 3, I have the Quake fruit. This is probably the, like, next best one, right? As far as, destructive capabilities, right? It was said that, this devil fruit could destroy the world, cracking skies, or what. I'm trying to remember what they called it in the manga, because like Whitebeard used one of those fucking, cracking sky moves, and it was like a named attack. I don't remember what it was called though. Like Skybreaker or some shit like that. I'll be doing that shit real quick. I'll be tipping shit over and stuff, creating earthquakes, rumbling, cracking people with that, he puts that, spear around them and stuff like, boom. That shit's devastating. That shit's like, I like that though fruit a lot. You know, Creating tsunamis, definitely be like one of the guys with that though fruit. And at number 2, I got the dark fruit itself. Yes, I have that one at number 2. There is a drawback with this devil fruit. If somebody's able to attack me, I'll feel like double the amount of pain that it would have been. So if somebody cuts me, it'll feel like even more painful. But I can pull in devil fruit users, and then they have their devil fruit powers are rendered useless. They can't do shit to me then. What I would do with his devil fruit, I would suck everybody into the darkness, and then I'll pour them out into the ocean. That's how you deal with that devil fruit shit. You create a portal over there in the ocean, and then you just pour them all into it. They won't be, finding a way back from that, unless they have friends who don't have devil fruits. But they're also getting pulled into the darkness, and they're like, when they go in there and they come out, they're all like fucked up. They're like, oh, what? They never came back like, okay. They were always unconscious when they came back. Yeah. So, and it consumes everything. It's like basically a dark hole. Yeah. But number 1, come on, man, I'm a Luffy fan. You see that shit, right? Human fruit model sun god Nika, or as Luffy still knows it as the gum fruit, as it was disguised. So with that devil fruit, we have the power. Anything the creator, or the holder of the devil fruit has can come to life. Luffy knows it as rubber. Everything around him is, bouncy. Everything is like, a cartoon. I'll be doing the same thing. I'll be like rolling out the red carpet, doing like matador shit. I'll be, tying people up with like the road, like picking the road up and turning it into like a carpet, turning it into like, doing all kind of shit, creating holes in the ground and digging myself to another place, entirely. Just how they're doing like Looney Tunes and shit, turning, things into like toys essentially and playing with them. The opponents I fight against and everything else. And then the silly shit that he does, where his eyes pop out his head, and like, you fuck people up like psychologically, like they're like, what is that? Oh my god, he's doing like shit that I like. Normal people don't do shit like that. I'll be turning people into pretzels and like, twisting them, tying them together, and throwing them. Creating chain of like all these people, tying their like legs and arms together, and then like throwing them around, tying them to trees, having the trees, I'll slingshot them away, all kinds of shit. But yeah, that's my top 15 devil fruits in One Piece with the 5 honorable mentions. Let me know what you think about that in the comment section, and tell me what your favorite devil fruit is in the comments. And be cool on the corner.